I was going to do 2 videos, but I'm going to try and mash them together because as I record this, it is the 13th of December and I don't have much time left, so I'm going to try and do these quickly. I was going to talk a bit about some of the creative production choices I made, and then also about some of the interactive music involved. So I'll quickly speed through some of that stuff. The interactive stuff is interesting. We made a decision, I mean, I won't bore you with the details, but the way you make music interactive and responsive to things that happen in game is largely dependent on what bit of software. It's called middleware, stuff like Fmod and Wise, or you can do it in Unity, which is a game engine, or you can do it in Unreal, which is a game engine. You have different options available depending on which one of those bits of kit that you use, and we changed a few things at a time which meant a lot of that interactive stuff wasn't quite as doable, but we did still get some stuff in there. So there's a few little things like the menu music, which is essentially a loop. I didn't want to have a situation where if the player went off the menu, back to the menu, off the menu, back to the menu, they kept just getting the same start. They kept, when a loop loops a few times, you really start to get those little bits in your head that repeat, and you go, it's this bit again, that's annoying. So what I wanted to do was to chop the loop, right, the main menu loop, into, I think I did 5 segments, and instead of saying play, 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 I said, every time you go back to the menu, randomly pick one of these 5, and then randomly pick the next one, and the next one. So each time you do it, you can do the maths, there's X amount of permutations of that. So hopefully, I don't actually know if that got implemented, but if it did, it should mean that when you go to the menu, you never really hear the same loop in the same order. You're always getting a slightly different flavour of that, so it's not quite as repetitive. In-game, there's a couple of bits where early at the start of the game when you're in the laundrette, there's a proximity layer that you don't hear unless you get close to the washing machines with the HYDRORCS in, and when you do, that layer becomes more audible. So you get a little bit more tension and a little bit more creepiness when you're close, which sort of tells you that there's a bit more danger, and then when you retreat away, that layer comes down and it gets a little bit more settled. There's a couple of other bits as well. There's the section where you are trying to evade the Daleks. There's 3 different states. There's a stealth state, which is the sort of standard, you're in that level and you're trying to get out of their way. There's a alert state where the Dalek kind of has an idea that something's like you've thrown something and it's seen it, or it's just seen you out the corner of its eye and it's going, hang on, what's going on there? And then the final state is pursuit, where it knows that you're there and it's actively following you, and the music steps up depending on which of those states you're in, so it should match the way the player's feeling. If you're being chased, it should sound a bit more like you're being chased than if you're sneaking around and the Dalek doesn't know you're there. So that's another thing we did. We did a similar thing as well with the CYBERREAPER. So when the CYBERREAPER appears, you get his little sting, you get his little theme, and then if you're within a certain distance of him, if he's chasing you, then you get an extra layer of chaos and threat, which should put the players on edge a little bit more. And then when you get a little bit further away, that dies down. It's still tense because you're still in peril and being chased, but we reserve that extra level of terror and panicked energy for when he's right on your tail. And the other thing I was going to talk about, again briefly, is some of the interesting little creative things we did, which I've mentioned a couple of them, I think, in the Edge of Time video, but we did with Emma, where there's the scene where she realises, spoiler alert, the scene where she realises that she's actually an AI and she's not a human and she's trapped in a computer screen. I slowly morph the instrument that's playing the melody in the background of this scene. It goes from a human voice, a female voice, to a synthesizer, and it's a subtle transformation, and the timbre, the sort of sonic texture of that synth is quite similar to the vocal one, so it's a subtle effect, but I think it works really nicely as she's figuring out what's going on and she's going, oh god, I'm a robot, sort of. The texture of that instrument is also changing as she's realising. So that's a nice little thing. There was an instrument in some of the tracks, like some of the time when you're around Jodie, some of the time when you're in the TARDIS. There's a soft pad sound. It's a little bit like a string sound. And that was made by taking a tiny little snippet of Jodie Whittaker's dialogue and breaking it into 1,000 pieces and reconstituting each of those 1,000 pieces at a particular pitch. So you sort of, it's called granular synthesis. So the granular bit is that you break stuff into tiny little, like dust, like sound dust.
I'm the Doctor. I'm sure we'll be. I'm sure we'll be.
You order those grains and say, right, I want you all to play slightly randomly, but within these sets of pitches or times, and you can control them in different ways. So I wrangled these grains, which had the sonic quality of Jodie's voice, and made them into this sort of soft, semi-ethereal pad. So you'll hear that in quite a few of the scenes with the TARDIS in. We did something cool with the TARDIS as well, which I've definitely talked about in the previous video, so watch that for a bit more info. But we, I think it was in the break between Series 11 and Series 12. I might have got that wrong. But the TARDIS was being slightly rejigged for I think Season 12. And in order to get an accurate version of the TARDIS for the game, so this was back on the edge of time, before the edge of reality, so the original VR version that we did. One of our producers went to the set and took some measurements and took some pictures of the TARDIS set. And I said, when you're there, can you get your phone and just like move some of the controls on the TARDIS and get some knob switches and crank turns and stuff like that? And he did. He got loads of stuff, sent it back to me, and then I chopped all of those little bits into tiny clips and then turned the most useful ones of those into percussion. So some of the time when you're in the TARDIS and there's music playing in the background, the percussion in those tracks is often going to be basically sounds from the TARDIS that I've slightly tweaked and processed and used in the music track. There's a few other things as well, like there's some of the CYBERREAPER stuff. I took the tracks that we recorded in Air Studios, one of the best recording studios in the world, the best orchestral players in the world, the best kit, the best engineers, and I pitched it down an octave and then put it through a guitar amp and did horrible things to this beautiful audio to make it sound crunchy and nasty and horrible and glitchy to represent the threat and the unstable nature of the Chaos Verse that you get chased through when the CYBERREAPER's about. There's always room to think of a new approach to something, or think of something else that you can record, or something else that you can sample and reverse and change the pitch and just do interesting things. And a lot of the time you'll do it and it'll sound like crap, and it will always lead somewhere. Even if it's telling you what direction not to go in, there's always a benefit to having a bit of play and experimentation with that kind of thing, because when it works, it really brings something new, I think, to a project, and it's worth doing. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed some aspects of how we did interesting creative things, and also how we did some interactive dynamic music, which is something I'll touch on more, I think, in the next projects that I do videos for. So yeah, thanks for listening. See you soon.